Hello, everyone. I'm Golda,
And I'm Jamie.
and welcome to the J Gold Impact.
So, for today's episode, we wanted to spend a little bit of time with you all to talk about workplace politics and some of the stressors that can come up.
Yes, because we're both working and we've both experienced these stressors and also the politics that goes along. And sometimes, we get into these situations and we just don't know how to navigate it. So, based on my experience, this is all coming from our experiences, like we keep saying, and Jamie's as well. We wanted to just address that issue, talk about it, discuss some concerns.
Right. And I guess to make things simple, maybe we can start by talking about what are workplace politics.
Yes.
And so I will start, and I'll just say that for me, the politics in the workplace are essentially unspoken rules and
Yes.
expectations.
Yes. Yes. So the expectations of, okay, you're coming to work and you're working from, I don't know, say 8 to 7 p.m.
Eight
And
to seven.
yes, 8 to 7. Okay, 8 to 6. That's what I'm saying. Some people, yes, there are politics surrounding that where the assumption is, yes, it's a 9 to 5 world, but the reality is it's really an 8 to 7 world. So that's why I say that because there have been times when I've worked and I've come in 8 o'clock, started clocking in, and I'm not through until 7 o'clock. And my manager is not saying to me, Golda, you know what? You're working too long.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would ever say that.
Exactly. And this is why we're talking about the work politics.
Right. And it's a good point because for anyone out there who might just be starting out,
Mhm.
rule number one, a 9 to 5 does not start at 9 a.m. and it does not end at 5 p.m.
Exactly. And rule number two, you can't please everyone. And that's an assumption that when we start working, especially when we're in our 20s, we're trying to climb that corporate ladder and also navigate that, trying to please all our coworkers, our managers, etc.
Right. And just as a note for again, anyone who's maybe an intern or just starting out, always check with your team to get an
Mhm.
understanding of when other people are arriving.
Yes, because a lot of it also is when we go back to workplace politics, that's a tongue twister, by the way. When we go back to that, it's the unspoken understanding that, we're in working from 8 a.m. and then there's some function happening after work. Now, the function usually starts 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. So the unspoken politics is, are you a team player? Do you show up to that? Do you say yes because you don't want to not be a team player? And how does that look? Right, Jamie?
Right. And, another little tip here. I know you can have long working hours, but
Hmm.
try not to miss those after hour events because your presence will be noted.
Yes, and that's what we're talking about. And also even lunch with coworkers. Do you have lunch by yourself? Are you prone to want to go to the gym? Sometimes I do that. Are you wanting to just ditch everyone and say, you know what, this is my lunch time. I'm perfectly fine and I need to carve out some time for me. But in the long run, that is viewed as you're not a team player. And this is what we're talking about when we say the corporate politics. So we talk about these things because it's important. Because even though, you want to carve out some time, you also have to keep a delicate balance between when you hang with the coworkers versus when you just go home and dish everything and say, forget about all of that. And it's just about me, my family, etc. So there is that, right, Jamie?
Right. And so, Mom, do you have any examples of situations that demonstrate this sort of corporate politics?
Yes. Usually at lunchtime, when because there's work meetings. That's the other thing too. Work time meetings during lunch hours. A lot of people shy away from that, but there's at least 3 days a week in my position where lunch is from 12:30 to 1, but then also I have meetings at that time. And it's just people, we get upset and people try to say, "Oh, that's the only time that we can meet," but at the same time, it's lunchtime. So that's also an issue because then when do you get time to eat? If you're always eating on the go, eating through meetings and eating at that. And I have come to realize that in corporate America, it's a given. It's not something that just doesn't happen. It really does happen, and a lot of people don't like to speak about that. So that's one of those corporate politics where it's like, do I ditch this meeting, or do I just go and skip lunch or have lunch later?
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, your
Mm-hmm.
example demonstrating these corporate politics was a time when you had a meeting during lunch and did you go to lunch separately or did you stay
Um,
for the meeting?
I actually ended up staying for the meeting,
Okay.
because again, we all say was it climbing that corporate ladder, and at the end of the day, that is viewed as something that, oh, I'm not having this meeting because I chose to go to lunch. So it's just how these corporations deem the importance of lunch. And the other thing too is after work. Your coworkers, you have, work life coworkers, and they always want to go out after work because, they're like, hey, Golda, let's go hang, let's go do this, let's have drinks or something like that. And it's okay. But then after a while, it becomes consistently once a week, twice a week to go out and have drinks. And then it's like, okay, you have your department. So do you go out and have drinks with them, or do you go home because you've been working since, I don't know, 9 o'clock, and now it's 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and you're just mentally fatigued and tired? Do you then say, hey, no, you know what? I'm not going? Another sense of politics in the workplace.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So we just wanted to kind of discuss these things and tackle it. And also for mental health benefits and taking care of yourself, how do you navigate that, right? Jamie, do you have an example where you had the work life politics issue come up?
Definitely. So, there was a time when our team was having a happy hour to celebrate one of our team members' retirements. And mind you, this wasn't someone on my direct team, it was someone adjacent to our team. However, that was the same night as a family member's birthday party, birthday dinner. And so I let my manager know that I wouldn't be able to go to this happy hour. I didn't tell her why, but I let her know in advance. Now, fast forward to a mid year review, and she referenced that same
See? Yes.
evening and told me that there were a few examples of how I was not demonstrating being a team player
Yeah.
and being collaborative.
And this is when it comes back after, during that so-called mid-year review, when they're talking about how you're trending, how you're tracking in your position. Yes, it does come back at that point.
Right, because for a lot of these sorts of roles, your job is not just your typical 9 to 5, what you do at your computer. It also encompasses what happens outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
How are you interacting with your colleagues? How are you going above and beyond? How many additional projects do you say yes to? That is how you get ahead, and that's how you can manage these corporate politics.
Yes, another one in the workplace that I've experienced is the boss speaking to you in an incorrect manner and knowing how to process that and what to do with it. Fun fact, when I was in my 30s, right, I had this position, and it was mid-level position, and we had this manager, and he would always just stress, right? Everything was a big deal. I mean, he would get so upset about the numbers, about what was happening, if he was meeting the budget, things of such. And that's all good and proper, but I mean, he would get so worked up that he would turn red, right? And it was just like, oh my gosh, this is not healthy, what have you. And then one year I heard him yell at a coworker. I mean, full-fledged, flailing, just beat red and just really losing it and cursing. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's horrible, right? Fast forward, like a year or two later, it happened to me.
Oh no.
Yes, 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 it happened to me. And it was just the minute, smallest thing. But it just made it, I felt so small, and I literally started crying. I literally started crying because I was not accustomed to anyone screaming and much less cursing in that manner. And then I was like, oh my God, no, I can't put up with this, right? And so I spoke to the group in the department, and they're like, yeah, he does that all the time, what have you. But I remember when it was directed at me how it felt. So no, I never went to HR or anything of such, because the following day he came and he apologized. He was like, Golda, I am so sorry, I lost my what, and
Temper.
I apologize, and it shouldn't have happened, etc., etc. Needless to say, this guy stayed in that company for the next, I want to say, 5 or so years. But honestly, over time, I just couldn't work for him anymore. And I ended up resigning. And it was just one of these things that I just felt like, no, I didn't go to HR, and I probably should have in retrospect. But it just felt like it was just so uncomfortable, because all it takes is one time for your manager to like curse and yell at you. Unacceptable, no matter what. And a corporation should not have to put up with that. But I did experience that, and I ended up resigning for that matter. And they always say people don't leave companies, they leave managers. So, in that regard, it was a big no no. And yes, I did leave, and I felt a little validated because years later I found out he was fired. But at the same time, it was just too much bad practice and bad behavior happening.
And how did you navigate that situation because you didn't go to HR?
Well, it was just, well, you know what? I knew it wasn't personal, and I knew he had a temper tantrum and an issue, but at the same time, I just did not want it to ever happen again, and I did not want to be in that position. So I just started looking for new positions. I started looking for new jobs, and I really, during the interview process, when I was interviewing with the hiring manager and the person in charge, I really took that into consideration to look at their temperament, their personalities, and how they handle issues. So I was able to also question them in terms of, in stressful situation, how do you deal with that? So that's one of those things that you may not experience, but if you do, it's very traumatic.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I actually
Mm-hmm.
have not experienced that. And I'm
Yes.
thankful I haven't because I don't know how I would react or manage
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I ended up crying. So that's just one of those things. And like I said, I think it was more from shock than anything else, that but it's not a good practice, and no one should ever speak to an employee like that, and it should never be sanctioned by the company or what have you. So if ever you experience that, my first um I guess my first thought or my first recommendation is to file something with HR. And I think, looking back, had I been a lot older, I probably would have done that. But like I said, I was in my early 30s, and it was just like one of those things that I just didn't have the tools to navigate how to deal with such a thing.
Mm.
So for all of you out there, watching in this YouTube streets, if we see something like that happen, please go to HR. Please, please, please report these managers, because it does not help. It's just a bad situation.
Yes, but also manage your expectations and know that unfortunately sometimes HR just protects the companies.
Hmm.
So just go into those conversations maybe with that in the back of your head and just be prepared.
Yes, and another thing too is also, and this is another strategy too. If it becomes unbearable and you're not ready to leave your job, you know what? Take a mental break.
Yes.
Take a mental break from your job and say, listen, I need to have some time where I can work this through and do that. Because there is such a thing that in the corporate America that allows you, if you're under stress and duress, to take a mental leave and just really think about if you want to go back and work in that company again. Because, it's a two-way street. They're hiring you, but you're also looking at them to see if they're meeting your expectations as well. And if you're being mistreated, that's a sign. Hmm.
Right. Great
Yes,
point.
yes. So please, if you like this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the notification button, because we're here and we would love to hear your thoughts on these things, and have you experienced bad behavior in the workplace, and also just office politics. What is your company? Do they have high office politics?
Right. And feel free to also leave us some questions. If you're
Yes,
going through a
yes.
situation where you want a second and third opinion on, please leave us a note below. We'll be happy to address it and support you.
Yes, because like we say, we're here to expose, talk about issues that no one wants to talk about, and also just give you tips and tools on how to navigate these things. And like I said, if you're in a company where you're being mistreated, one, take a mental health, and two, assess if you really want to stay there. And if not, resign. And if it becomes a place where you don't see yourself climbing that corporate ladder, leave. Yes. So thank you. We will
Yes,
see you
thanks
next
so
time.
much for joining us. We cannot wait to connect with you soon, and we'll see you next time.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.